Hey everyone, it's Tom here, and joining me today is Rich to discuss Fallout 4 on Xbox One X.
Hello there.
Yes, so we've got a few notes from Bethesda's website about what this Xbox One X enhancement does. Basically, it includes a push for 4K with a dynamic element in there. We'll discuss that in a bit. Also, there are bullet points like improved God rays and also pushed out LODs for trees, geometry, and so on. So if you're familiar with our coverage of PS4 Pro support for this game, you'll be getting deja vu here because actually some of these bullet points are the same, barring the fact that PS4 Pro actually pushed for 1440p instead. So the question is then, to what extent does Xbox One X actually measure up to what PS4 Pro did in the other departments?
Yeah, and there's another point too, which is what happens if you don't update the game, because obviously the Xbox One X has its own range of out-of-the-box improvements for games, including smoother frame rates via access to more GPU power, plus they force 60 times anisotropic filtering. And of course there's other stuff too, so for example there's the RAM disk, and of course Fallout 4 back in the day did have storage difficulties on the Xbox One, and the best way to play it was using an SSD. So should we take a look first of all at what happens when you play Fallout 4 without the patch installed and stack it up with the latest patch?
Yep, sure thing. This is our kind of infamous Corvega factory test. Always use this as a good kind of stress test. You might be familiar with the situation because it's kind of what happened on Pro. If you ran PS4 Pro with the pre-enhancement patch with just boost mode enabled on the console, you actually got a smoother frame rate than an actual Pro patch installed. And you're kind of seeing a similar effect on Xbox One X, pre-patch versus the enhanced. So I nabbed some footage before it went live, and yeah, you do seem to get smoother frame rates in parts on the original way it was played. So to be specific here, you get a basic 1080p output from the console, none of the LOD improvements or God ray improvements. It's just basically what you got on the original Xbox One.
Okay, so in theory we are getting a pretty massive boost to resolution there, plus the additional draw distance and graphical effects, and you know the deficit is about 2 to 3 frames per second in the stress points.
There is some variability there. You know, you've seen some points where it goes below on the pre-patch and sometimes higher, but in general I would say it is a smoother ride on the pre-patch build. But yes, you are seeing a very ambitious uptick in resolution, and all those effects kind of stack up. It's basically the PS4 Pro situation all over again. A resolution boost, but with some downsides to that.
Okay, but the resolution boost is pretty pronounced this time. I mean, effectively, at least a 4 times resolution boost. So, what are we actually getting there?
On the resolution front, the promise is 4K, but they're honest in saying that it is a dynamic setup. And to test this, obviously I go to the top of the Corvega tower, look down at the point where these drops are happening, and the resolution, the lower bounds of the resolution there, is 3264 by 2160. So that is only scaling on the horizontal axis, a bit like Skyrim on Switch if you remember, and I think other Bethesda titles do this as well.
More to the point, Fallout 4 on Xbox One base, which we actually missed at the time, it does have a horizontal scaling component, and it is retained for this one.
That's right. So in this case, as a 4K game, you know, this is actually doing a really good job. It's just this Corvega area where I've noticed it go down to 3264 by 2160. The rest of it is native 4K, or at least a majority of the time it is. So the lower bounds there, if I was to pull a stat out, is 85% of a true 4K.
Okay, that's not bad going really.
No, I wouldn't say so, and that means combined with the TAA component of the game, it does produce a pretty satisfying image on a 4K set, though I will say it's a bit soft because of the AA it's using here.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's talk about the draw distance improvements.
Yeah, so this is always satisfying to show off. We can do Xbox One X before the patch versus after. Basically what you get there is the LODs in the distance are suddenly brought to life. The trees doing kind of a panning shot across the Corvega rooftop. You do get a good sense of the near field, mid-range and the furthest detail settings and how they're all divided up. And what you get on Xbox One X there is basically what PS4 Pro has already. You know, all the trees in the distance are suddenly filled in and it looks like a more fuller, richer world. One curious thing, the original Xbox One already pushed better draw distances than the PS4 Pro build when it comes to the mid-range. So you get all the sort of details on the building in the middle here kind of fleshed out already. So Xbox One X gets that mid-range stuff, kind of inherited from what it already had on the original Xbox One, plus the PS4 Pro's far-field detail on trees. So it's kind of an all-in-one, you get everything.
So the best of both worlds plus a substantial resolution bump.
That's right, and God Ray improvements as well. So this shot, it's very subtle. You can see it on the kind of wire dangling around the lamppost here. There's a slight resolution boost over PS4 Pro, definitely compared to the original Xbox One. I think it's one of the highest settings you can get on PC. What we can say for sure is it's better than the PS4 Pro build, and also a massive, substantial increase over what we had before on Xbox One.
Okay, and we were having those storage issues with the original Xbox game back in the day. Now, I don't think we actually retested the base hardware for this, but, you know, in terms of swapping weapons and whatnot, no problems now?
Substantially reduced. I will say you will bump into some stutters as you kind of roam the world. Definitely in this sort of section as you walk around just the outside of Diamond City, you're going to get some hitches and stutters as it kind of streams in stuff. I think this is for the first time we're seeing it. I can't say for sure if it's a recurring thing, but it's noticeably improved over what we had on the original Xbox One.
Okay, so let's move on to the crucial factor. Now, we've had a number of reports from users not especially happy with performance in this patch based on first impressions. So let's put some hard numbers onto that. What are we getting in the stress points?
Obviously targeting 30 FPS, but if we do like the kind of entrance area to the Corvega factory, immediately you see Xbox One X is dropping frames where PS4 Pro is optimized nicely at 1440p. The fact is, they're both going to drop, they're both going to stutter when you pull out Molotov cocktails and let rip on a flammable area like this. In this case, Pro drops a little bit lower, but across the board, I would say Xbox One X is dropping more often and more severely. You can see there's kind of a delta there, about 2 to 3 frames per second, which I would say you could attribute to the resolution difference between the two platforms.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that is, I don't know. On the one hand, I would say that the dips in performance below 30 frames per second, not really what you'd want from an Xbox One X title. But on the other, the resolution boost is there all of the time, and you are getting a pretty decent 4K presentation, which isn't really the case on PlayStation 4 Pro. 1440p on a 4K screen doesn't really hold up quite so well.
No, historically not. Though temporal AA added, we've seen in games like Titanfall 2, it can, you know, it's decent enough, but yeah, definitely seen this running closer to 4K most of the time anyway. It's a very big uptick in image quality.
In terms of traversal though, there's some interesting results here, because that's generally CPU related or storage related, not so much GPU related. And if we do our head-to-heads in traversal, Pro and Xbox One X behaving quite similarly. Yeah,
this must be a quirk of the engine, because, you know, Xbox One X does have higher clocked CPU cores, and in the end you'd expect that to be the bottleneck when streaming in all this data, the draw calls. But yeah, it's a very erratic frame time reading on the left there on both sides, you know, and in fact if you see the frame rate right here as we approach, you can actually see they're exactly the same reading. So very curious. I'm not sure what that's about, to be honest, but you know, rest assured you're getting the same experience as you did before.
I think the resolution choice here is interesting because they're obviously quite confident about delivering native 4K, and they have the kind of cushion of the dynamic resolution being able to kick in at any point where the GPU is under maximum load. And at the same time, you know, there are still drops there that weren't there on the original code running in enhanced mode. So interesting really, it looks as though they've kind of chosen a balancing point here. Point is, it is slightly slower than what people might have been expecting going in.
But overall, there's time to dip in and fix, and if it is being pushed too far, they can rein in the resolution maybe a bit, but it is early days. We've seen Bethesda make a patch, then go in and improve things after the fact. We've seen it with the Far Harbor DLC, with the fog, and we've seen it with the PS4 Pro patch as well, which by the way we've re-recorded and retested for this video.
But with much the same results from last year.
Yeah, but with much the same results. But just to be sure, we've gone back in and retested everything, so...
Okay, fair enough. Looks like that covers pretty much everything.
Yep, I think that does. A pretty good result, I think, barring the frame rate, so hopefully that can be improved. Anyway, thanks for joining me, Rich.
No probs.
If you did enjoy this analysis or found it useful in any way, please do like and subscribe to support what we do at Digital Foundry. And as ever, this video is encoded at 4K, so if you want to see the original source file, we have that on our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, so feel free to check that out. But until next time, thanks for watching.
What do you mean you can't open the gate? Stop playing around, Danny. I'm standing out in the open here.